Imagine an entire, a multi-billion-dollar manufacturing plant grinding to a complete halt because one guy, let's call him Dave, decided to just retire and move to Florida.
Oh, yeah. It happens way more often than people think.
Right. The standard operating manuals are all just sitting there on the shelf. The machines are fully functional, but nobody knows that you have to tap the third pressure valve twice on humid Tuesdays to make the production line actually run.
Because Dave was the one doing it.
Exactly. Dave Brain was the actual undocumented engine of that entire plant. Anyway, welcome to the Deep Dive. It is June 26, 2026, and today we're looking at something that, honestly, it feels like it should have existed a decade ago.
Totally.
We've got a brand new press release and several really fascinating white paper excerpts today from a company called EON AI Ventures, and they're detailing a launch they are calling the Work Intelligence Fellowship.
Yeah, and on the surface, that title, it probably sounds like just another corporate training initiative to toss onto the pile.
Right, like another seminar.
Exactly. But looking closely at the source material, this is an incredibly ambitious structural attempt to solve two entirely different, massive societal crises at the exact same time.
Yeah. So on one side of the equation, you have that corporate brain drain I just mentioned with Dave.
For retiring experts.
Right, the crisis of seasoned experts retiring and taking decades of unwritten, hyper-specific knowledge just right out the door with them. And then on the flip side, you have the experience gap.
Which is huge right now.
It really is. It's this ongoing crisis where college students are paying an absolute fortune for degrees, but they're graduating without the actual hands-on enterprise experience they need to, convince a hiring manager to actually take a chance on them.
Right. So you have these two separate bottlenecks that have basically plagued the modern economy for years. And this initiative attempts to use one to unclog the other.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. I mean, the enterprises desperately need labor to capture this vanishing tacit knowledge, and the students desperately need the friction of a real-world environment to gain that experience.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we really need to understand the scale and the mechanics of that first problem before we can appreciate why this solution actually matters.
Yeah, the corporate side of the problem.
Exactly. The source material paints a pretty stark picture of what is happening inside major enterprises right now. It basically states flat out that the most valuable knowledge in many organizations is totally undocumented.
Right.
It just lives entirely in the lived experiences of senior staff and skilled field workers.
It is the tacit knowledge, the unwritten rules of how the job actually gets done in the mud, as opposed to how the manual theoretically claims it should get done in a sterile environment.
Yeah. I always visualize this using a family recipe.
Oh, I like that.
Like, imagine you have this incredible top-secret recipe for a holiday dish, right? Everyone expects it at the dinner table, but nobody ever bothered to write down the exact measurements.
It's all just by feel.
Right? It was all just a pinch of this and cook it until it looks right. Then grandma moves away, and the family realizes the core asset of their holiday dinner just walked out the door, and they have literally no mechanism to replicate it.
That analogy scales up perfectly to industrial operations, except, instead of a holiday dinner, you're dealing with a global logistics network or like a semiconductor fabrication plant.
Stakes are a little higher.
Just a bit. When the shift supervisor who knows exactly how to coax the aging machinery into working decides to retire, that specific recipe is just gone. The financial impact of that lost productivity, the downtime, the errors made by the replacements, it is staggering.
But I have to push back here for a second because this kind of feels like a solved problem. I mean, don't companies already have endless training manuals, corporate wikis, and onboarding video portals?
Right, the dreaded training modules.
Exactly. We have all sat through those standard operating procedure modules. Why is this suddenly being framed by EON as a new, untamed crisis?
What's fascinating here is the distinction EON makes between static documentation and dynamic expertise. Those training manuals you mentioned, they are almost always written by technical writers sitting in an office, completely far removed from the actual friction of the floor.
Okay, so they're disconnected.
Very much so. The manuals dictate the theory of the machine, but the retiring expert holds the nuance. The wiki doesn't tell you what the machine sounds like right before it jams. It doesn't tell you the workaround for when the software glitches out during a high-volume shift.
Right, so the manual is the blueprint, but the expert holds the actual art of the job.
Which brings us to the core of what EO AI Ventures is actually proposing here. They are introducing this concept of work intelligence, positioning it as a proposed fourth enterprise system of record.
A system of record. Okay, for you listening, we need to define that because it sounds like dry corporate jargon, but it is actually the foundation of how modern business functions.
Yeah, think about how companies operate today at scale. They have an ERP enterprise resource planning to track their physical inventory, supply chains, and financials.
Right.
They have a CRM customer relationship management to meticulously track their clients and sales funnels. And they have PLM product lifecycle management to track how their products are engineered and built.
And companies spend billions on these software systems.
Billions. Because of one fundamental rule of business, if you don't track an asset, you do not own it.
Wow. But they don't have a system of record for the human expertise.
Exactly. The actual how work is performed day to day has never been systematically captured, structured, and owned as a durable corporate asset. Until now, companies have essentially just rented it.
Rented the knowledge.
Right. You pay a salary, you rent Dave's knowledge, and when Dave retires, the lease is up and the knowledge evaporates. EON's thesis is that companies need a system to capture and permanently own that knowledge asset.
Which makes logical sense, but it brings up a very obvious, immediate logistical nightmare.
The capture part.
Yes. If this tacit knowledge is so elusive, if it is an unwritten recipe, who is going to do all that meticulous interviewing, documenting, and structuring? Dave certainly doesn't have the time to write a novel about his daily tasks. He's busy trying to keep the plant running.
Right, he's got a day job.
And the company cannot afford to hire an army of specialized $300 an hour management consultants just to shadow their own blue-collar workforce for 6 months.
No, the ROI on that would be terrible. That massive labor shortage for knowledge capture is the exact gap that leads us directly into the second crisis outlined in the text, the bottleneck in higher education.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the source material explicitly calls out hundreds of mid-sized universities. It is not talking about the elite Ivy League institutions that already have endless greased pipelines to Wall Street banks and Silicon Valley tech firms.
Right, the Harvards and Stanfords are doing just fine.
Exactly. It is targeting the everyday universities that are struggling to provide their students with real, scalable enterprise experience. And the text specifically mentions international students, who are increasingly funding these universities as a key demographic desperately needing this kind of exposure.
Pinpointing mid-sized universities and international students is crucial to understanding the business model here. It highlights a systemic failure in the current internship ecosystem.
How so?
Well, usually a university might have, say, a few dozen highly competitive internships available at local companies. The vast majority of the student body gets left entirely behind. They graduate with deep theoretical knowledge, but zero practical application.
So they know the academic theory of supply chain management, but they have never actually sat in a room with a warehouse supervisor who is swearing at a broken conveyor belt trying to solve a real messy problem.
Exactly. They don't have a tangible resume builder.
Right. To an HR hiring manager looking at a stack of generic resumes, I read the textbook. Doesn't carry any weight. It is like applying for a job as a commercial pilot and saying, well, I read the Boeing manual, but I've never actually sat in a cockpit.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the stakes for higher education right now are almost existential.
Because of the costs.
Yes, the cost of a degree is skyrocketing globally. Students and their parents are demanding a tangible, immediate return on that massive financial investment.
Makes sense.
If a university cannot provide a portfolio deliverable, a professional reference, or genuine hands-on work that translates to employability, that degree rapidly loses its value in the marketplace. These mid-sized universities need a structural, highly scalable solution to remain relevant, just as badly as the enterprises need cheap, eager labor to capture their knowledge.
Okay, so we have the enterprises sitting on a goldmine of uncaptured knowledge,
Yeah.
but they lack the labor to mine it. And we have universities sitting on an army of eager talent, but they have no real-world mines to send them into. It sounds great on paper, but I mean, enterprises don't just want 20-year-old undergrads stumbling around hazardous chemical plants or secure corporate data centers asking annoying questions.
Yeah, of course not.
So how does EON actually bridge this without creating a massive liability for the companies.
That is where the structure of the Work Intelligence Fellowship comes in. This isn't just a casual extracurricular club. It is a formalized, highly structured program led by Anna Lajerskar, the dean of the EON Academy at EON AI Ventures.
Okay.
She built their previous university and talent programs, and she designed this fellowship specifically to mitigate that exact enterprise risk.
Mm,
The text specifies that this is a credit-bearing academic capstone.
that's a real class.
Yes. It is heavily supervised by university faculty, functioning similarly to established university consulting capstones where students act as supervised junior consultants for an entire semester.
Let me bring in a direct quote from Anna Lajerskar, from the press release, actually, because it crystallizes the mission behind that structure. She states, quote, "There is a generation of talented students who can't get the experience employers ask for, and a generation of hard-won expertise inside companies that is quietly being lost. The Work Intelligence Fellowship connects the two."
It's a perfect summary.
Yeah. She emphasizes that this gives young people a real chance to do meaningful, consequential work, while giving enterprises a highly managed labor force they just can't source anywhere else.
And the execution of the fellowship backs up that rigorous approach. They do not just throw students at a company and say, go learn things.
Good. That would be chaos.
Total chaos. Instead, they divide the student fellows into two very specific, highly functional tracks to handle the capture process systematically.
Let's break those tracks down. The first track is called the Work Intelligence Analysts. The source material notes these students are tasked with researching industries and engaging the companies initially,
They function as the vanguard.
like scouts.
Exactly. Before anyone steps foot on a factory floor, these analysts identify where the critical knowledge gaps actually are within a specific industry or a partnering organization. They do the deep dive research to map the landscape, identify the key retiring personnel, and understand the workflow bottlenecks.
I picture them almost like investigative journalists.
That's a great comparison.
Right. They are the ones out there hunting down the story, figuring out who the key players are, and building the dossier on where the valuable information is hidden. They find the experts who hold those unwritten recipes.
But then what?
Well, yeah, once an analyst finds the expert, packaging a Word document full of interview notes doesn't solve the enterprise problem. If I am a factory worker covered in grease, I can't read a student's 40-page thesis to figure out how to fix a valve.
Which is exactly why the second track exists, the work intelligence architects. If the analysts are the investigative journalists gathering the raw data, the architects are the specialized editors who mold that raw story into a deployable, structured digital format.
Wait, let's slow down here. You just mentioned structuring a digital format.
Yeah.
The text says these architects use EON's specific software platforms, Genesis and Field IQ. Logistically, how does a 20-year-old college student actually extract 30 years of intuition from a factory worker? Are they just, like, following them around with a clipboard? Because that does not sound like something that easily translates into a piece of enterprise software.
Oh, it goes far beyond a clipboard. The architects are trained to use EON's Genesis platform, which is actually designed to spatially and conversationally map out an expert's decision tree.
Spatially map it.
Yeah, the student isn't just asking, what do you do next? They are using the software to capture the visual environment, the sequential steps, the safety checks, and the specific conditional logic, like your example of the humid Tuesdays.
Oh, wow, so it's super granular.
Extremely. The student inputs this raw tacit knowledge into Genesis, which begins structuring it into a standardized logic flow.
And this is where the benefit to the student becomes incredibly tangible for their future career. Through this rigorous process, they are earning genuine enterprise experience.
Real resume builders.
Exactly. The text highlights that they walk away with a portfolio deliverable. They can actually show a hiring manager, a professional reference from a corporate stakeholder, and the strongest fellows are even invited into paid roles.
Which is huge.
Think about an HR manager reviewing resumes. Seeing EON Genesis architect who maps supply chain logic for a Fortune 500 company is going to vastly outperform a standard summer marketing intern who just, managed a brand's social media.
Oh, without a doubt. They are graduating with a verifiable proof that they can navigate complex corporate environments, interview seasoned stakeholders, and utilize cutting-edge enterprise knowledge software.
Which brings us to the actual technology, the back end of this whole operation.
Yeah.
We've established how the student architects package the information. But how does that data actually get deployed to the front lines? How does a student's structured mapping in the Genesis software become a durable corporate asset that a company actually owns and uses on the daily?
To understand the deployment mechanism, we have to look at the pedigree of EON AI Ventures itself. The source material establishes that they are not some fly-by-night startup that just discovered generative AI 6 months ago.
Right, they've been around.
The EON Group has over 25 years of deep experience in immersive technologies, simulation, and AI. They have served thousands of institutional customers across more than 80 countries.
That is a massive, established global footprint. They already have the plumbing in place.
Exactly. They have the infrastructure to process the massive amounts of data these students are gathering. The text introduces their overarching technology stack as the Intelligence Flywheel platform.
The intelligence flywheel.
Yeah, this includes the Genesis Capture tool we discussed, the Field IQ deployment tool, and an evaluation layer called Assess IQ.
Okay, the intelligence flywheel. Why a flywheel?
Well, think about a physical flywheel in engineering. It is a heavy mechanical wheel that takes a significant amount of upfront energy to start spinning.
Right, it's hard to get moving.
But once it gets going, it stores kinetic energy. It compounds its own momentum and becomes incredibly efficient. EON's intelligence flywheel works similarly with data. It takes the structured knowledge captured by the student architects in Genesis, verifies it, and then encodes that expert procedure into an AI-guided simulation.
But how does it compound?
It functions a bit like a language model learning from human feedback. Every time a new worker uses the EON simulation on the floor, the Assess IQ layer tests their competency.
Oh, I see.
Did they complete the steps correctly? Where did they hesitate? The system gathers that feedback and refines the simulation. The more it is used, the smarter the specific enterprise system becomes.
So what does this all mean, like in practical everyday terms for the end user? If I'm listening to this and I am a hospital administrator or a warehouse manager,
Yeah.
how does an AI-guided simulation actually change the reality of my day-to-day operations?
It fundamentally changes the entire paradigm of onboarding, safety, and execution. The source states that this platform delivers these AI simulations to any worker on any device.
Any device.
Yeah, be it a tablet, a smartphone, or a spatial headset, and verifies their competency right there in the field in real time.
Okay, let me make sure I am visualizing this deployment correctly. Let's say I am a brand new employee. It is my first week on the job at a massive chemical processing plant.
Okay, high-stakes environment.
Right. I am standing in front of a complex piece of machinery I have never seen outside of a textbook. In the old days, I would have to go hunt down a paper manual or page a supervisor who's already too busy, or worst case scenario, just guess and hope I don't trigger an alarm.
A highly inefficient and remarkably dangerous scenario that plays out in industries globally every single day.
But with this work intelligence system deployed via Field IQ, I can pull out a rugged tablet right there on the floor. I access the AI-guided simulation. And that simulation isn't just a generic factory-issued tutorial. It is the highly specific, digitized expertise of Dave, the 30-year veteran who retired last year.
Exactly.
His knowledge was captured by the student fellowship, processed through the flywheel, and is now delivered to me exactly when I am staring at the machine. It is like I have the digital ghost of the ultimate expert standing right over my shoulder, guiding my hands, saying, "Remember, check the third valve first."
That is precisely the end game. The AI guides you through the procedure step by step, and the Assess IQ component verifies that you actually completed the sequence correctly before the system allows you to move on to the next phase of the operation.
Wow.
Yeah, the tacit knowledge of the retiring generation has been permanently institutionalized, digitized, and made accessible on demand to the least experienced worker on the floor.
Wow.
This raises an important question. It absolutely does, especially regarding the scale of this ambition. Because when you think about the compounding nature of that flywheel, the implications are staggering. Every single time a procedure is captured by a student and deployed to a worker, the enterprise gets smarter.
Right.
If EON is successful in establishing this fourth system of record, it doesn't just put a Band-Aid on the brain drain. It fundamentally shifts how industrial and corporate enterprises train, deploy, and scale their workforces globally.
Because the training is just there.
Exactly. The barrier to entry for complex, high-skill jobs drops significantly because the baseline expertise is baked directly into the tools the worker is holding.
It is an incredible vision for the future of industrial labor. And it all hinges entirely on this symbiotic relationship created by the Work Intelligence Fellowship. It is an incredibly elegant symmetry when you step back and look at it.
It really is.
You take the looming disaster of corporate knowledge loss, which companies are currently just accepting as an inevitability, and instead of letting it happen, you turn it into the ultimate educational opportunity.
The enterprise gets their new system of record. They finally own their work intelligence just like they own their inventory.
Right.
And the mid-sized universities get a lifeline. Their students secure professional portfolios, paid roles, and the exact kind of real-world friction they need to become highly employable in a competitive job market.
It really feels like one of those rare structural scenarios where every stakeholder actually wins. The university stays relevant and justifies its tuition. The student gets hired because they have real experience, and the company doesn't lose its secret recipes when the senior staff retires.
Absolutely.
For you listening to this deep dive right now, I want you to think about your own workplace. Think about the undocumented experts in your office or on your specific team. You know exactly who I am talking
Oh,
about.
like everyone knows one.
Right. It is the person who knows the exact bizarre sequence of buttons to push to unjam the legacy software system that always breaks at month end. It is the person who understands the specific loophole in the procurement process that saves everyone 3 hours of data entry every Friday. Think about what happens to your daily workflow if that person wins the lottery tomorrow and just never comes back to the office. That immediate panic you would feel, that massive gap in operational continuity.
Yeah.
That is the exact gap EON AI Ventures is attempting to close with this fellowship.
And looking at that gap leads to a fascinating, somewhat provocative implication for the future of work itself. We have talked extensively about the immense benefits to the corporate enterprise and the immense benefits to the college students.
Really?
But let's look at it for a moment from the perspective of the expert, the person whose knowledge is actually being captured.
Okay.
Building on the source materials concept of turning human expertise into an AI-guided simulation, it brings up a profound paradox. If your employer suddenly possessed the capability to map, extract, and digitize every single intuitive, hard-won skill you possess, turning it into a permanent owned AI asset on their servers, does that make you, the original expert, infinitely more valuable because you are the essential human training the system? Or does it make you entirely replaceable because the system now knows exactly what you know?
Wow. That is a slightly terrifying but absolutely necessary question to ponder as we move into this new era
Yeah.
of capturing human expertise. It completely changes the leverage in the labor market. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Work Intelligence Fellowship, the intelligence flywheel, and the future of how knowledge is owned and shared. We will see you next time.